Okay, we're going to continue on, and this time we're going to add reading from the keyboard. So just like printf was a function from the standard I/O library, we're going to use something from the standard I/O library that reads from the keyboard, and that's called, or actually it reads from standard in, scanf. It's a similar structure. There's a couple of differences though. We have to do a couple of extra things. The first is we need a variable. If we're going to read something, we're going to bring something into the program, we have to put it somewhere. It has to have a spot in memory where it can sit. And the place where we put values, or the way we put them in memory, is through a variable. So a variable has a type. I'm going to start with an integer type. So int, and I'm just going to call it x for now. So that's a line or a statement all on its own, and it's creating a variable called x of type integer. So now I've made a space, a location in memory where I can store integers, and I can call it by name, and its name is x. So now with scanf, I actually want to move this. I'm going to put it after the printf statement. And looks like I've put a colon there instead of a semicolon. Okay, so scanf, we're going to read a value from the command line. So I'm going to change this hello world message to be, please enter a number. And then I'll just put a semicolon and a space. And so scanf, now in the case of scanf, not only do we have a character string here, which we call a format string, but we have a second parameter, which is where we're going to put the contents or what we get from the keyboard. And our variable name that we're going to put it in is x that we defined up here. But there's one extra tricky thing to using scanf, is I have to put an ampersand in front of my variable name. So I say scanf and then ampersand x. And later on, much later in this course, when we talk about pointers and arrays, we'll learn what that ampersand means. But for now, it's just whenever we use scanf, there has to be an ampersand in front of the variable. And now, what goes in between these double quotes in this character string? It's called a format string in this case. And it's not printed out. It's just telling scanf the format of the input that we expect. And we use % and d to say we're expecting an integer input. And I could build this and run it now, but it would be kind of boring because I'm not doing anything with that variable once I get it. So once I get it, let's print it back out just to see that we have it. So this is a new use of printf. We're going to use printf to print not just our string. I'm going to start with a new line, and then I'm going to say your number is, and now right here is where I want the number to appear, and this is again a format string, so I'm going to put the same sequence in, %d. So where that %d is, what that's saying is go look in the rest of your argument list, and here's a variable x, take the value of that variable and print it here. So the format string in scanf is saying, that %d is saying we're going to read in a digit, so an integer number, and place it in the variable called x. And this printf, well, we've seen all of this before up to here, so we're printing this character string. So a new line, and then your number is, and then %d, this part is telling printf right here, take the value of this variable and print it there. And I'm also just going to put a new line character there so I don't get jammed up next to that press any key message. Integer. Read from standard in, which by